spoken / whispered. So hopefully that's okay with you. I am probably very late to this party, but I recently watched on Netflix the documentary, or like the short series, MH370, the plane that disappeared, which was about the Malaysian Airlines flight. And I felt like, especially because we just passed in March the 10-year anniversary, so to speak, of the flight going missing, that I would do a video on it. I do want to say, I mean, this isn't like a typical true crime. It is an unsolved mystery, but I guess some of the like theories could be like a little triggering, but I would say this is definitely a milder case in terms of like gore and things of that nature. But obviously, you know, if things about flying or disappearing or, you know, aviation accidents are triggering to you, then, you know, this might not be the right video. So as always, sorry, my camera's not focusing, it's struggling, the chronicles of being a half-head. But as always, if this video does not seem like it's for you, that's okay. Now would be the time to click right off and go check out one of my many other videos or any of the other amazing ASMR artists that are on YouTube. So for those of you that have stuck around and have not yet watched the series on Netflix, I would definitely recommend it. I will say though, and obviously this is due to the nature of the situation, you do not get a resolution at the end of the series. So if that's what you're looking for, that one is not going to have a happy ending or an ending whatsoever. So let's get into it. It's on March 8th, 2014. Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 basically vanished from air traffic control radar screens. There were 239 people on board that were never found and are basically all presumed dead because there's no indication otherwise. So in July 2018, the Malaysian government, who basically has taken the brunt of the responsibility for investigating the disappearance, basically issued what they described as the final report on the fate of the plane. Malaysia's transport minister, Anthony Loke had promised total transparency in the document with no redactions or obfuscations. Don't know what that means, but it wasn't able to answer the fundamental question of what actually happened to the plane. Then French authorities started a new investigation into what really happened, and in 2023 the affected families urged Malaysia's government to allow another search. So now we'll kind of go through what happened and the theories that have been put forward, which is also kind of what the documentary series does as well. So flight MH370, a Boeing 777, yes, my brain, left Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia at 12:41 a.m. local time on March 8th, 2014. More than 150 of the passengers on board were Chinese. There were also 38 Malaysians, 7 Indonesians, 6 Australians, and several passengers from a host of other countries, including France and the US. 12 crew members were on board as well. So the final communication from the cockpit, less than an hour after takeoff, and this was also heard by air traffic control, was the following. Goodnight Malaysian 370, which is super eerie. After that, the plane stopped communicating with ground control. It deviated from its route 2 hours after takeoff, according to data from military radar. For reasons that are still unknown, the plane abruptly turned backward toward Malaysia and then on toward the Indian Ocean. And there are no reports of bad weather or distress calls. So basically, it kind of shows you, there's like a map from the thing that I'm reading and from the documentary. So it was heading basically like this way to Beijing, and the flight took off and then, like, for whatever reason, deviated. And in the documentary, there's a lot of talk about like how they found the pings, because even after it went off radar, there was still messages being, not like communications rather, being captured by towers and satellites. So that's kind of how they figured out, like 2 hours after it stopped communicating, where it was. So the plane traveled south and may have changed altitude at some point. It sent a final automated satellite communication that was received but did not contain any information about where it was. Other aircraft communications had been purposefully disabled earlier or somehow powered down in the flight, and then the plane disappeared. So search attempts were quickly launched, but investigators really had little idea of where to start and, a ton of territory where the plane could be. So teams from Singapore, Vietnam, and Malaysia were searching the water near Vietnam, which is partway between Kuala Lumpur and Beijing, about 12 hours after contact was lost. FBI teams and Interpol personnel flew in to assist, with 9 countries contributing to the initial search. 40 ships worked around the clock and 34 aircraft flew during daylight hours. A total of 26 countries eventually pitched in as the search area widened, but they found nothing. On May 5th, 2014, interestingly enough, I'm recording this on May 5th. On May 5th, 2014, 79 days after the plane went missing, Malaysia, Australia, and China announced their agreement to search underwater. At the request of the Malaysian government, the Australian Transport Safety Bureau led the investigation, but discovered very little. On January 29th, 2015, now 327 days after the plane vanished, Malaysia officially declared the disappearance as an accident. The report, 1 year after the disappearance, gave a detailed picture of delays and protocol violations before the search was launched, CNN reported. It said that 5 hours and 13 minutes passed between the last communication from the plane and Kuala Lumpur's first distress signal, and that another 5 hours passed before the first search flights took off. The Malaysian government's final report, released on July 30th, 2018, said authorities cannot determine with any certainty why the plane disappeared. The key finding was that the plane's sharp diversion at 1:25 a.m. was done manually, but it is still unclear who was responsible for the maneuver. Malaysia's civil aviation chief resigned after the report found that air traffic control did not comply with standard procedures. It took more than 1 year to find the first piece of MH370. The fragment of the plane's wing washed up in July 2015 on Reunion Island, thousands of miles from Kuala Lumpur. After a 4-month hiatus for detailed mapping of the seabed, the search resumed in October 2015, but bad weather slowed the investigation. A report in March 2016 on the 2-year anniversary of the disappearance did not shed any more light on what had happened. By May 2016, more than 105,000 square kilometers of seafloor in the southern Indian Ocean had been covered, leaving 15,000 square kilometers left to search in the area. In July 2016, the Dutch company hired by Australian authorities to lead the search said that it may have been looking in the wrong area for the past 2 years. The fruitless search was suspended in January of 2017 after more than $140 million was spent. Officials said it was possible the crash site was farther north. Families of passengers and crew members had become so frustrated that they launched their own search for debris in Madagascar. In the year that followed, organizations like Australia's Chief Science Agency released reports, while analysis of satellite imagery and debris continued amid talks to formally begin a new search. The Malaysian government started the latest search in January 2018 with Ocean Affinity, a private firm based in the U.S. It covered 112,000 square kilometers in the southern Indian Ocean, including a 25,000 square kilometer target area that had never been searched before. It was called off in May 2018 with no new significant findings through investigation, though investigators said they still wanted to search farther north. In years of searching, many suspected pieces have been found, but the only confirmed traces of the Boeing 777 aircraft have been 3 wing fragments that washed up on the Indian Ocean coasts in Madagascar, Reunion Island, and Tanzania. Malaysia's Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad has said Malaysia would consider resuming the search if there were new clues. So in the documentary, they talk a lot about the theories about what could have happened. I think what's really frustrating, I'm not done yet, but I think what's really frustrating for everyone is that, you know, if a plane goes down, you should be able to like find a plane. It's not, you know, I don't mean to laugh. I'm saying like it's not a little thing. You should be able to find it. So to just have like no real wreckage is very bizarre, and obviously really devastating for the families that need closure. So the documentary was actually released in March of 2023, and the director actually called the plane's disappearance the greatest aviation mystery of all time. So some of the theories have been strongly dismissed by authorities, and then others are just kind of out there. There was a theory that the Malaysian government considered, as well as the Australian Transport Safety Bureau, and that was that the passengers and crew of the flight were incapacitated by an oxygen deficiency. They speculated that everyone on the plane, including its captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, somehow fell unconscious. The plane would have been on autopilot until it ran out of fuel and then crashed into the sea. There were also other versions of this theory, including a potential hijacking in which someone damaged the oxygen supply, or an accident that harmed the plane's mechanics and affected its oxygen levels. Another version that went around for a long time was that Shah, the pilot, basically committed a mass murder suicide, that he was the only one awake and basically like turned off the oxygen, or like depressurized the main cabin, you know, basically knocking out all of the passengers, and then in a suicidal state he disabled communication before steering the plane into the ocean. So there, in the documentary, there was a lot of backlash that for a long time this theory was rampant, and people that knew him, you know, described him as not that. Of course, like, we never truly know if someone's suicidal, but like, he had like a home improvement YouTube channel, and you know, just based on like who he was as a person, it seemed not plausible that he could do something like this or would. There were also people interviewed who worked with him, so you know, these were also people that were familiar with him and this theory, despite being kind of spread for so long, really it seemed to be very impossible. French investigators looking into the plane said in 2019 that one pilot seemed to have been in control until the end. Others have posited the theory that a pilot deliberately crashed the plane. A Canadian aviation expert and former airplane crash investigator told Canada's CBC News in May 2018 that he was certain it was a murder-suicide by a pilot. But the July 2018 report had offered evidence against the idea that it was a deliberate act by the crew. The 495-page document said neither the pilot nor the first officer showed psychological signs suggesting they could have deliberately crashed the plane. It said that among the crew members there were no behavioral signs of social isolation, change in habits or interests, self-neglect, drug or alcohol use. Investigators also said crew members' movements captured on CCTV before the flight and their voices on air traffic control recordings did not seem any different from how they were on previous flights. Kok Soo-chun, the lead investigator, told reporters at a press conference about the report that the crew exhibited no anxiety or stress. He said that while the report was not ruling out anything, it found plenty of evidence against the suicide theory. Australia's former Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, said in 2020 that he believed, however, the plane's disappearance was almost certainly murder-suicide by the pilot. An engineer whose wife and 2 children were on the plane said in 2019 that French investigators had found a mysterious 200-pound load that was added to the flight list after takeoff. Christopher Goodfellow, a former pilot, has speculated that an electrical fire on the plane led pilots to turn it back around toward Malaysia to find an emergency landing strip. He said the plane would have flown on autopilot as the fire incapacitated the crew and passengers. But another pilot, Patrick Smith, said it would have been unlikely that the plane would travel for hours on autopilot after a fire. Other evidence against the theory is that the plane also turned again after heading toward Malaysia. Smith told Business Insider in 2015 that the nature of the debris found also might suggest that the plane was under control when it crashed. The plane might also have landed gently in the water and sunk mostly in one piece. Experts have said that this theory is consistent with the debris that has been found. Another theory is that the search for the plane was in the wrong area and that investigators should be looking north of Malaysia. Perhaps the plane crashed, or perhaps it landed and was hidden somewhere, but that was rejected by Inmarsat, the British company that owned and operated the satellite that tracked MH370 until it dropped off the network. Hold on, I need some water. The July 2018 report pushed back on a theory that batteries and fruit in the plane's cargo had somehow formed an explosive mixture that brought down the plane. Other theories are that the plane was taken over remotely in a bid to foil a hijacking, but the 2018 report said there was no technology on the plane that would allow control to be taken from the pilots remotely. Details that emerge in early reports on the plane's disappearance, including that 2 people boarded with stolen passports and that no one seemed clear whether everyone had boarded the plane, have helped other theories swirl. Meanwhile, a piece of debris found in Madagascar in 2022 suggested that the landing gear was opened before the plane hit the water, which could support theories that the crash was deliberate. But the item has not been officially confirmed to be part of the plane. So that was another thing. There were some pieces found that they think are part of the plane, but there was they talk more about this in the documentary, and I don't have the patience to go through all of the details, the nitty gritty, because it would be a multi-part video. But basically in the documentary they talk about some of the pieces that were found and sent to Boeing were missing serial numbers, or things were taken off of them. So it was very sketchy. there was like, I don't think it talks about it in this article from what I remember, but there was like theories that pieces of debris were being planted to basically confirm that the plane went down. More outlandish theories include the plane being shot down by perhaps the US military, or the idea that Russian President Vladimir Putin knew the plane's location, a mystery extra passenger taking control of the plane, a Bermuda Triangle style area causing the plane's disappearance, and even North Korea taking the plane. Other theories blame the CIA, Israel, aliens, and all of the traditional boogeymen for conspiracy theorists. So there was another theory kind of connected to Russia, similar to what they're talking about with someone taking control from the pilots remotely, and it goes into detail in the documentary. And this is not like, I'm not like sponsored by the documentary, but I'm just trying to kind of weave that information in. There was these two men who were on board that were of Russian descent, and there was like a claim, like a theory that was proposed that like one of them went to the bathroom, caused a distraction. I'm sorry, there were three of them, and that one of them went to the bathroom, the other one was like banging on the door, causing a distraction to get like the flight attendants to like divert their attention to this man. And then the third man basically went like under the plane, so evidently like in between, I think it's first class and like the main cabin, there's like a thing, like a latch that you can open, and you can actually drop down into like the control center of the plane. It's like where all of like the electronic stuff is, other than like where the pilot and the main, like the cockpit is, and you can like supposedly take control from there. But there was evidence that basically debunked that, but that was another myth. And then another myth that came out was that the plane was flown to like a military base in Russia, and is there, or was there. It also coincided there, like a few months after this plane went missing, there was a plane that was actually shot down by Russia. So there was a lot of theories kind of connected to Russia potentially being involved. So despite the efforts of one of the largest and most expensive searches to date, so much information remains unknown. If the plane's route could be established by a future investigation, or if the aircraft itself were to be found, it could provide clues about whether it was deliberately heading somewhere or whether there was an accident. We also, at this point, do not know which of the pilots were flying when it disappeared, or if it was someone else entirely. And unfortunately, even if the plane is found one day, these questions would probably still remain unanswered. Another thing that was kind of debunked was the possibility of a hijacking, because nobody really sent out, like, when a plane's getting hijacked, a lot of times people will text their family members and say what's going on, or the pilot would say something. That didn't happen. So I will say, if this kind of stuff is interesting to you, I mean, obviously it's devastating before anything else. I couldn't even imagine. And I think, this is something that scares people about like any kind of public transportation, is that you just are relinquishing total control. It is very scary to think like this plane is just still unaccounted for. I mean, the odds that everyone is unfortunately gone is like gone is pretty high. I just couldn't imagine being on that flight. I mean, whatever it was that happened to these people, I hope and pray that it was abrupt and not dragged out and even more torturous. The other thing about the documentary is you hear from family members, which of course is just devastating, but it reminds you that these are real people with families, and these people are picking up the pieces, and there's no pieces to really pick up. It's just so interesting how little we really know about this flight. Of course, there was a lot of backlash against the Malaysian government. I believe it was when they released the report 1 year later where they basically said, like, it was an accident. They like called off the search and declared, everyone dead. And I believe there was like a protest at the government building by the families. On the one hand, you're just funneling money and energy and efforts into this to no avail, and then on the other hand, there's hundreds of people's families that just have no answer. It was interesting to hear about some of the theories that were put forward. There was basically like a group of people that came together to like investigate this that were like not part of the government, which was really interesting. But again, a lot of that came with a lot of drama that you could learn more about if you watch the documentary. This is one of those that probably feels more like storytelling. The odds that someone watching my channel has any information about this case is probably very slim to none, but if somehow, some way you have any connection to this, you heard something in a bar once, I would totally tell you to like talk to someone. I don't know who. If you or anyone in your family was affected by this, I'm so sorry. Obviously these kinds of things are very rare, but I think that's what makes them even more dramatic. I'm sure there will be people in the comments that talk about why they're afraid of flying and things like that, but you think about how many flights happen every day, every month, every year. This is such a rarity, but of course, because it's so extreme, and this is even more extreme. It's not just a crash, it's a literal mystery. I would say I hope this doesn't dissuade anyone from flying. I'm not trying to give anyone nightmares, but I just thought it was such an interesting, sad situation. And I know it's probably been talked about at length everywhere, but if you are behind the times like me and didn't watch the docuseries yet, I would totally recommend it. And I hope that you found this video informative. If you didn't know much about the case, I didn't know much before I watched the documentary. So I hope you learned a little something, and maybe it will encourage you to look up more information. If you think I left anything out, please feel free to comment down below. If there's any stories like this that you would like me to talk about, it's different than the typical like true crime unsolved mystery. So I thought it would be something worthwhile to cover. If there's anything similar, like this, that maybe doesn't fall in the true crime bucket, but it's still an unsolved mystery, I'm happy to do it. So feel free to recommend in the comments. Feels kind of weird saying this, but as always, like the video if you liked it. Comment down below, and of course subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next video. All right, bye guys. Bye guys.